Okay, I'm not sure what the issue is. There, we just had a bit of a delay, but I'm gonna get cracking on this and get going. So hopefully those of you that have joined in can get some value out of it. So I'd just like to say thanks very much for coming along. Great for you to attend tonight. I know we're all busy and we've all got things to do. So if you can all just say a quick hello, type something in so I know you're there, that you're not off making a cup of coffee. That'll be great. And my name is John Higginson. I'm the owner of King's Coin, and this is called a Building Knowledge series, which I'm presenting to you to basically to educate and help people to get better at doing property developments. So yeah, just say a quick hello. So again, so I know you're there, and I'll get started. I'm going to start off by just giving you a quick introduction about who I am and where I come from. So obviously you can tell by the accent, I'm from Ireland originally. I moved over here about 7 years ago. And when I was in Ireland, I was doing some property development as well, and I actually started off this is the very first house I bought actually in Dublin, in Ireland. And I renovated this property and then subsequently rented it out. And over the course of my career over there, got to doing sort of larger scale developments. This is one that we did in Ireland as well. So I've done sort of, my background in Ireland has been starting in renovations and doing single properties up to actually doing both residential and commercial developments. Then in 2008, when the GFC kicked in, I sold some of my property and put it into the stock market, and as you can see by the graph, that all disappeared quite promptly. I still got the property that I didn't sell over there, and that's actually come back now. It's doing quite well, so it sort of led me to stick to what I know and stick to the property, because I think I do better out of it. So yeah, so after that, I decided to go on a holiday in Ireland, or from Ireland to Australia, and I then met this gorgeous lady, my now wife, and I moved over here permanently. So that was 7 years ago. We've now got I've got 4 kids in total, and I started King's Coin about 5 years ago now, coming up to 5 years ago. And one of the reasons I started King's Coin was because as I say, I personally lost a lot of money in the share markets. I've seen my own dad lose a lot of his retirement money in the share markets, and the King's Coin has come about because, you know, a king passes his wealth from generation to generation. It's not something that you lose. So I've great faith in and belief in property as an asset, as a long-term asset that you can pass on to your kids, and that's why I wanted to share with you through these webinars how to do that, and hopefully that you get some value out of that as well. And so I started in Adelaide, doing some smaller subdivisions, so 1 into 2s, 1 into 3s, 1 into 4s. This is one that we did in Adelaide, and we're now doing slightly bigger ones. So this is 8 townhouses that we've done. We're starting another one of 22 townhouses, and we've done subdivisions of 14. And here's one we did into blocks, divided into 14. So this is just purely a subdivision. So we put in, by subdivision, what I mean is we put in all of the infrastructure for the civil works. So we put in the roads, we put in the curbs, we put in all of the services. So your stormwater, sewer, Telstra, your water, etc. And basically then just sell the blocks. So we don't actually do any construction on these. Whereas on the previous ones, for example, these, we're actually building townhouses. So if you've got any questions, please type them in, And what we'll do is I'll get to them during the intervals and after each sort of topic as we go through, and hopefully, obviously, get more interaction from you, and hopefully build that up as well, so I can answer more of those questions and give you more knowledge as we're going through. Okay, great. So the topics I'm going to cover are basically under three main themes. So we've got risk, we've got finance, and then the team. So within risk, I'm going to start with risk, and just going through some things like negotiating contracts, feasibility studies, finance, and risk analysis. So we've only got an hour, so it's not going to be a totally comprehensive covering of each topic. But as I say, if you can ask me some questions through it, and I'll try and answer those. If not, I'll try and email you back with them, and I hope that's okay with everybody. And give me your feedback as well. It's also important, so I can see what's actually going on. I'm going to start with a couple of questions for you, just in terms of your own experience, so I can get a feel for what you've done. If you can tell me if you've ever subdivided before or developed before, just type in a quick yes or no is fine. And also, again, maybe if you can tell me some of the challenges, that's great, thanks. If you can tell me some of the challenges that you faced as well during that experience, and obviously if you made a profit from it. So just give me some background information. I know a few of you filled out the survey beforehand, and I got an idea sort of how many properties you've got and what you're hoping to get from this, and hopefully the topics that I'm covering in this is what you're looking for. If not, we will try and do a second one down the track. So as I say, what I'm going to cover tonight is how to avoid those pitfalls, how to assess those risks, how to fund a large development, and also who you need on your team. At the end of it all, I'm also going to give you then some a real life example of our current project. I'll go through that. I'll go through the full feasibility of it with you, and also I'm happy to pass on a copy of all of the slides. And a copy of the feasibility as well. So if that's all right, you can just relax and just listen, because I say you'll get all of the slides, you'll get the feasibility study, you'll get a copy of the replay afterwards. So I really want you to sort of just try and take it in and listen, and then obviously you'll get more out of it. Okay. So this is the project I'm going to speak to you about at the end, actually. Torrens Road, Kilkenny, a small development of 22 townhouses and a bit of commercial at the front of it. So I'm going to start with risk. Now, risk is a massive issue that you have to deal with in property development. There's an awful lot of money to be made in property development, and the reason there's a lot of money to be made is because it can be quite risky. And anything that's got the higher the risk, the higher the returns. Simple as that. So it's got to be one of your main considerations when looking at property development, and when understanding it and going through the decisions that you make throughout your property development. Start with the biggest risk that you've got is really not knowing what you don't know. So you go into this and you think, okay, yeah, I'll divide 1 into 2 and whatever, and you don't realize what it is that you don't know. And from what I see, about 80% of those small investors or mum and dad investors, I think, lose money. I quite often watch them buying blocks of land, and I look at it and think, that's got to lose money. It's too expensive, they're overpriced, they haven't taken into account X, Y, or Z. And I had a guy I was speaking to the other week. He told me that he bought a block of land, subdivided into 2. And there's about 80 grand's worth of profit in there, or so. And when he got into it and actually started demolishing the existing house, he found out that there was quite a large septic tank in the block of land, which then had to be taken out. I think there might have been a bit of remediation or something involved, and then filled back in and compacted, etc. It cost him an extra 50 grand in costs, which obviously he hadn't anticipated, and that's why we have gone and done the larger developments, because if you've got an 80 grand profit, you get hit with $50,000 in a if you get hit with a $50,000 in unforeseen expense, then basically there goes your profit. So you've taken on this project, you're going to do all this work over the course of a year, and there goes your profit. You're gone, you know. So at least with the larger developments, if you've got $1 million or $2 million profit in there, then you get hit with a 50 or 100 grand expense that you weren't expecting. Well, it's not the end of the world. You've got a bit of contingency built in there anyway, and it's you know, you can live and survive and still make a decent profit for yourself. So that's why we typically sit in that range of development of, say, 1 to 10 million. So above those mum and dad investors, but below the big guys as well. So we don't want to sort of step on their toes too much. So having that attention to detail is very important. Looking at every single decision that you make and understanding and really try to think it through, really try to think the long-term implications of those decisions, because they do have long-term implications, and something that might seem very small today, or you don't understand it, which is even worse. And again, this is my point, you don't know what you don't know. If you don't understand the question you're being asked or the decision you're being asked to make, then make sure you ask questions. Better to look stupid and feel stupid than it is to, at the end of the day, lose money. You can only learn, but I'd rather learn with a small cost than, you know, that school of hard knocks and it costs you a lot of money down the track. So some of the questions that you can ask to make sure that you do understand, I've written out a whole litany of them here, so I won't go through them in detail, but again, you'll get these in the slides afterwards. But it's just, you know, really being relentless in asking questions. Make sure, and even when you think you've asked everything, say to yourself, what else am I missing? What else do I have to ask? Where else do I have to look? So, and I'll go through later on the team that you have around you. So some of the people that you can actually turn to ask some questions as well. And again, we all make assumptions in any course of business, and I'd always say to you as well, check your assumptions. So don't just assume something and think, oh yeah, I know what's happening there, that'll be, you know, X, Y, and Z. Check it out, make sure you know what it is, and I'd say be relentless with asking questions and going into detail. Also, when you're buying, don't get too caught up in the emotion or excitement of it. You know, a lot of us can. It's a very good negotiating tactic and you want to be careful it's not used against you. So, what the negotiation tactic is time, where people use time, where they get you to invest a lot of time in doing due diligence, checking out a project. You know, you spent maybe a couple of weeks or even a couple of months on this project, and hours and hours and hours, and spoken to lots of people. To at the end of the day, you know, your gut instinct might be saying to you that this isn't really the best deal in the world, and for some reason, but your excitement or your emotion might be saying, no, it'll be okay. You know, I'll be able to get through it, or you're the glass half empty rather than the glass, glass half full rather than the glass half empty sort of an attitude. And sometimes that's, I think, don't be too optimistic in this. Go for the pessimistic side when you're buying. You make money when you buy, not when you're selling and when you're going through the whole development. If you get it right at the start, you will make money. So just be cautious. Just, you know, look at everything. It's all about time, is right. So obviously we've all heard the saying. We all know the story. Time costs money. It's as simple as that. One of the biggest factors with time that you can't control is, for example, getting a development approval through on your site. When we're buying a site, and typically you do this with the larger sites. You can't so much do it when you're buying 1 and 2s. When you're buying larger sites, you're dealing with, I suppose, a more professional real estate agent for a start, and also typically a more professional vendor. And when we're buying anything, we will always ask it to be subject to development approval. So we won't buy a block of land if either A, it hasn't got development approval, or B, it's subject to the development approval. And the development approval process can take 12 months, can take 18 months. Now, for example, we've got a property at the moment in Torrance Road, and We put that under contract 18 months ago now, and subject to development approval, and expecting development approvals to take 6 to 9 months as they normally would. But in this particular case, it's gone on for 18 months, and I'm just very glad that I'm not the one that's holding the costs on that. Even though I've still got control of it, I still have to spend the money on getting that development approval through, and it's still very frustrating that it's taking 18 months to get to the development approval stage, but at least it's not costing me money. So that's a big factor, and you can typically get that in a contract by leaving a little bit on the table. So, for example, with that particular project, we gave them probably an extra, I would say, 5 to 10% over what we could have got it to. I could have negotiated hard with them and got the price down, but I negotiated hard and left the price where they wanted it, but got that development approval in there. So, and the same with them. On the other side of it then is when you're actually start construction. So when you go to build and you've employed a builder, you're signing up the contract to get the builder to start. You've also got then, how long is that builder going to take? So you budget for maybe 9 months build or a 12-month build. So if it goes over that time, you need to be paid by the builder. It's called liquidated damages. And typically, you need that. Your banks are going to require that in part of your finance funding. It's a commercial contract. So again, completely different to just going as a regular punter to one of the main builders and saying, project builders, and saying, you know, I want to build this house, so it shows your catalog, and yeah, we'll go with that one, please. With a commercial build, you've got liquidated damages, which means you stipulate at the beginning of the contract, okay, Mr. Builder, you've got 9 months to build this. If you go over 9 months, you then have to start paying me for basically for the cost that you were incurring by holding that development. So that'll be, you know, your interest. It may be the interest on not only just the borrowing costs that you got, but can also be the interest that if you are able to settle on that with all of your purchasers, you're losing out on that interest, and you can't penalize the builder, so it can't be a punitive charge, but it has to be of value to what you're actually, in proportion to what you're actually losing. So yeah, time is a big thing, and obviously we all know interest. The banks are charging interest on your borrowing. Over time it racks up, and it's typically on a larger commercial venture as well. Your interest is capitalized, so therefore you're paying interest upon interest. So again, time is very important. Managing that time is very important, and we've got we do. I can teach you about it again another time, but having schedules in place and looking at all those schedules and keeping everybody accountable to their schedule is highly important, and a way of managing your time and managing your budget. So yeah, there's exactly that. Profit decreases over time. So the longer time you're holding a development, the less profit you're going to be making. It's as simple as that. These two boys, Mr. Trump's probably not as popular here as he is in America, and more popular here is the richest man on the BRW rich list in this country this year, Harry Triguboff. So these are obviously both very well-known developers, and both of them use time and risks in different ways. So, for example, Harry doesn't use the banks anymore, hasn't done for years, but he used a lot of his own money, and also the equity investment, so large equity investment, and the same with Trump. So Trump uses Trump went broke with the banks at one stage, and managed to hold on to his property by basically telling the banks that if you take it off me, you'll lose a lot. If you let me hold on to them, I'll work it through and I'll work my way out. And fair play, he did. And he now uses a lot of equity investors as well in his developments. So that's how he's controlling his risks. And typically on these developments as well, with the banks will look for pre-sales on. So in other words, you've got that's where the bank is controlling the risk, and it's also good for you as well. So your pre-sale. So for example, if you're borrowing $2 million construction costs. That means, and you've got $400,000 per townhouse that you're selling. You need 5 pre-sales in order to get that construction started. So in other words, you've got enough contracts to when you finish construction that you can actually pay back what you've built. So that's called your pre-sales, and that's how the banks work that out. So the life cycle of the real estate market is also something to look at. So again, I think from the sounds of things, obviously I'm in Adelaide, so some of you guys are in Sydney, and some of you are in Melbourne, so you're probably better qualified to look at the property markets there. But from what I've heard, the property market is certainly heading to a peak, if not at a peak, in Sydney and Melbourne at the moment, and certainly in the apartment market. And it's getting into a development, you've got to be very aware of time. So, you know, if it takes you 12 months to construct it, it takes you 12 months to get your development approvals through. You're looking at least a 2-year window from the time you're negotiating and signing contracts to purchase this block of land to when you're actually going to get out. And the idea is that, you know, you get out alive. And so having an understanding of where the property market is in that life cycle is extremely important. And ideally what you want to be doing is you want to be buying at the bottom or buying during that recovery stage. And by the time it gets to expansion and gets to peak, that you're actually selling. And when it comes to the contraction stage, it's the case of really sitting on your hands and then having and sitting on your cash and not putting your cash into shares, because when property markets go down, typically the share market also follows it. So sit on cash, wait for the bottom of the market, and then buy heavily at the bottom of the market, that you've got enough stock under contract, and you can get you can get very good bargains at that point, and have enough stock to hold you right the way through until the next peak. So, and that's understanding that cycle is extremely important. You don't want to buy at the peak, and that's why I think Adelaide is good at the moment. It's typically Adelaide is a slow but steady market. They don't get very excited and go through big bubbles here. It just sort of ticks along nicely, very moderate growth, and you can sort of see it here that it just very average. We've not had massive increases over time. Typically sort of 4 or 5%. I think back in maybe back into 2007, 2006, they got a bit excited, but typically not an awful lot, certainly in recent years. What's interesting about Adelaide versus Sydney, as you see in this diagram, is that, so what this has done, Sydney here is in blue, and it's from 2004 to 2009. And they've superimposed on top of that Adelaide, but from 2011 to 2015, so 2 different time frames. But it's amazing how similar the curve of the graph is. And what that says to me is that, you know, Adelaide is following Sydney, but we're obviously just a bit behind. And this is typically what we've seen in the past, is that the peaks and troughs tend to be just a little bit out of sync. And quite often, like, and I've seen it lately here in Adelaide now, is we're getting investors from Melbourne and Sydney coming to Adelaide because basically they can see the peak of the market in Melbourne and Sydney. They see Adelaide's got a little bit more legs left in it yet, and I reckon probably about at least 18 months to 2 years, and there's still some good opportunity here. So yeah, it's just interesting the way they superimpose those 2 different time periods across on 2 different cities. Very similar. It's amazing. So another risk that you've got is obviously managing the budget. You know, on time, on budget, everybody's happy. Over budget, not so happy. So part of keeping it on budget is to have a contingency in your budget. Now, we typically have, when I'm doing my feasibility, I could have probably around 15% contingency in my budget. Once I start firming up on my costs and I've got my fixed price building contract, I've got my development approval is through, you're basically locking in all of your costs, you know where they are, you can start reducing down that contingency and it literally bounces straight across into your profit. One development that we did, for example, we had we put in some pipe work and we put in where the water meter was going to be located. So it was going to be located, for example, on the right-hand side of the driveway. And then the SA Water came along and said, no, we need to put it in on the left-hand side of the driveway. But all our drawings are done for the right-hand side of the driveway. Now, again, this comes back to those little things and little decisions and how they can have a bigger impact down the track. So it was moved to the left-hand side of the driveway. And of course, then when we actually go to construct, it means we need new construction drawings. It means that now instead of the pipe going down the left-hand side, it's going all the way down the right-hand side. And it created a lot more of an issue in terms of the actual construction as well as everything else. So for what seemed to be a little issue, not fully looking into the longer term impacts of that, created some problems. In another development, we had a contingency in there to put in 2 water tanks, and we ended up having to put in 3 water tanks or sewer tanks, and luckily we had a large contingency in there because basically it cost us a lot of money, and I'll show it to you later on. So variations as well. When you're doing variations with the builders, they're giving you variations. Just be careful to double check them. They should be pre-negotiated in your build contract, so you pretty much know what the cost of a variation is going to be in advance. So you've got an hourly rate set up, or you've got a cost plus X amount of margin, so that it'll be cost, and the builder's got a set margin, so be that whatever it is, 15%. You agree that anything that comes in, invoice, show me the invoice, add 15% for your margin. That's going to be the variation. That's fine. Larger the percentage buffer, again in bigger developments. So again, I come back to that same point of if I've got a $200,000 buffer in there versus in a small development you've only got a 50 grand total profit, whereas my contingency, my buffer is 200 grand. So on the larger developments, you've got a bit more forgiveness. Also, when you're doing your feasibilities, you need to be very thorough with it. It gives you a very clear picture. If you don't have a detailed feasibility, you get this foggy picture of what is reality. And so again, I would say to you things like do your due diligence, check the services, check the connections. So like just by going to SA Water and or whatever the water company is in your locality, just going to checking the water, and it's got a water connection there, that should be fine. Well, maybe it's not fine. You've got to look at the size of the water connection. Is it enough to serve all of your development? Is the water company going to turn around and say to you, well, because you're doing this, and then there's going to be another guy up the road putting in another 100 houses as well, I need you to actually upgrade the pipe, and that comes at your cost. So understanding where the services are and what size and capacity those services have is equally important. Checking electricity is another one, and capacity for that. And again, sewer and it's the same issue, and capacity, and the same with stormwater. So stormwater can be quite an expensive exercise depending on the lay of the land. Which way is it on? Is it flat land? Is it a hill? Is the water going to flow naturally, or do you have to pump it and put it uphill, or how is it going to work? So understanding all of this is highly important. For example, as saying to you before, in Penny's Hill Road, in this development we had a feasibility to do 2 tanks, and it turned out to be 3, and these were significant tanks. You can see the size of them there. So they are, I think they're 22,500 litre tanks by 3. So in their concrete tanks, they have to be craned in the and they're underground. So this all has to be excavated out. It's a massive expense, and to have that extra one put in there was a significant amount of money. Okay. Now, sales as well. So the risk with your sales is, will you achieve what it is you think you're going to achieve in terms of price? So the market is quite fickle. And again, it comes down to understanding exactly what the market is looking for. So you might look at one project and see they're getting, $450,000 for theirs. I'll get $450,000 for mine. You really have to look at in detail, are they selling theirs, and why are they selling? Why is that developer selling that product? So look at things like, is it a single garage or a double garage? So this is understanding the market. It's understanding what the market is looking for. And it's equally important, just before I go into that point more, it's equally important to look at what's not selling. So really look at what's not selling. You learn more probably from what's not selling than what is selling, because you can look at what's not selling. So for example, I was looking at a property the other day that we're doing a smaller development over in another suburb, and what's not selling there was one property on the market they've listed for, I don't know, 750,000, I think it was. Had it on the market for 3 months, couldn't sell it, ended up selling it for 633. So they lost $120,000 from what they anticipated it was going to sell for to what it actually sold for. That's got to be wiped out. Whoever did that, their profit's got to be gone. If they haven't even made a loss on that, And the reason for that was when I compared it to another property that they put it on the market for 880,000, so quite a bit more expensive, and it sold within 10 days and sold for 912,000. So they get about 30 grand over what the other guy had, and same size block of land. The cheaper one was 200 square meters. The larger one was 260 square meters. So very comparable, 60 square meters in the difference in terms of house size, and but the real difference was one had a single garage, one had a double garage. Now this is in a nice suburb with your typical buyer is going to be a family with kids up to sort of teenage years, So one had bedrooms. The cheap one had bedrooms. The two main bedrooms in there. It was a 3-bedroom house. The second 2 bedrooms they're only 2.69 meters wide. So 2 very small bedrooms, a good sized master bedroom, single garage, and a single lounge room. The other house, double garage, 2 lounge rooms, 4 bedrooms, all decent size, all above 3 meters in each direction. So, and it makes such a difference. So understanding what's going to be buying and people are buying is extremely important. Also then look at what specifications are they looking for. So again, do they want stone bench tops? Do they want laminate or 2-pack kitchens? Do they want tiles or carpets? Again, get into that detail. Understand your customer. 100%. Understand your customer. Ask the questions. Go out and look at the display homes. Check everything out. Find out talk to the sales guys that are selling the display homes in the display homes with the builders. Ask them what's selling. What's hot at the moment. Also, another big point that you might underestimate is the difference between selling off plan versus selling an existing property. They're absolutely poles apart. Your regular real estate agent doesn't understand how to sell off plan. your regular buyer doesn't want to buy off plan. They want to see it, they want to feel it, they want to touch it, and it makes such a difference. People don't have the imaginations, or they don't have the trust that you're going to deliver that particular to that specification, or to their imagination, or to their expectation. And quite often they're let down. So it's managing those expectations, because you're going to have to sell off plan. You're going to have to sell. You have to get pre-sales in order to get your funding with developments, and that's a very, very tricky thing to do. So giving some incentives at the beginning, leaving a bit of money on the table, whatever incentives you need to give, do that. But again, be careful with your valuations, because again, the valuations, and I'll show you this in a few minutes, the valuations that you use, or if you reduce those valuations, that affects then your financing capability as well. A final point I would say to you is that be aware of stress. This is a stressful industry, and I say this as a risk. Excuse me, I'll get some water. You all still with me? I say this as a risk because it's very real. I've got young kids, and quite often, you know, I'm managing these projects, and there's a lot of money on the line, and there's a lot of decisions to be made, and those decisions are crucial, and it puts a lot of stress on you as an individual, and that can have an impact upon you in your family, and you know, being able to sleep at night, and you're going to be under that stress for potentially a 2-year period. So it's having that. It makes it easier when you know what you're doing. It makes it easier when you know what you're getting yourself in for. It makes it easier when your wife or your family understands what you're getting yourself in for. So before just jumping into a subdivision or a development, just sort of make that decision now that you're going to, I suppose, invest the time to really understand what all of the risks are. And at the end of the day, you know, we all want to make a lot of money, and we all can make a lot of money. It's really about I'm not trying to spoil the party. It's just a case of being clever, being smart up front. Don't get yourself into a position whereby what's more stressful is losing money or owing money to the bank. You know, you're borrowing heaps of money on these developments. So that's more stressful than anything else, because that just wipes you out, and that lasts years, and you can't get out of it, and etc. etc. So do your due diligence, look at the risks. We all want to make a lot of money. We all can make a lot of money. Let's just do it right and be clever. Okay, so any questions at this stage? Thank you very much so far. I hope it's going well. I hope you can understand my Irish accent. You might have to turn up the volume a bit more. I can't give you subtitles, I'm afraid. And I can't do much about my accent either. So yeah, just please put in some questions, and I'll try and answer them afterwards. I'm not sure how to do it right now, and I don't want to go searching. So I will certainly get them later on, and I can email you back afterwards as well. Okay, so moving along. Funding your development. I want to talk about that now. And obviously, there's several different ways of funding your development. Main one being cash. And that's not too easy to come by. Most of us have a little bit, but we don't have enough. And but you do need a certain amount of cash or equity, or you know, to do a development. And I think this is where a lot of people get hung up with starting in a development. So, you know, everybody imagines and thinks, you know, you're going to need millions, and you do need millions, don't get me wrong, but it's how you get those millions is really the key, and how to minimize the amount of cash that is required, and using more leverage as well to get them across the line. But yeah, certainly if you've got the cash, you don't have any worries. It's the safest way to do it. You don't have any banks, you don't have any interest. You can hold out as long as you want in terms of time, because you don't have that interest creeping up on top of you. but I don't know many people that are in the luxurious position of having the cash to finance a property development. So as a whole, great, but we just need some of it, really. Banks play a large role in funding most developments, and typically you can borrow, I'll show you, you typically borrow up to, excuse me, this might get a bit complicated, but stick with me. You can typically borrow 50% on of land value. So without DA approval, it might be a bit less, but with DA approvals, 50%. And that, I know if you're used to buying a house and you're going to subdivide it into two, you're thinking I can get more than 50%. And you can, but on the larger developments where there's no income from it, and it's really, you know, wishful thinking without approvals, and wishful thinking without pre-sales, because there's little or no revenue from them, then they'll typically lend you 50% of the land. So that means you've got to come up with 50% of the land purchase cost, plus stamp duties and settlement costs. Don't get too disheartened just yet. I'll continue through this and show you how it's done. So then the bank will look at the total development and say, okay, we will lend you then the total development costs up to 75%. So again, what that means, if you're building let's say 10 townhouses, you're going to sell them for 500,000 each. That means there's a total value of 5 million. The bank will say, we'll lend you 75% of 5 million, whatever that is, 3.75, is it? Or they will lend you, I got that the wrong way around. They'll lend you 75% of the total costs of the development, 65% of the total completed value. So again, that 5 million, they'll lend you 65% of that. So that's a completed value, it's 65%. Or 75% of the development costs. So say it's costing you 3 million to build, and that 75% and that 65% now include your land. Okay, so you can throw that back in as well. So the 65% of completed value is, say, 3.75. 75%, if that's costing you 3.5, then that's what they're going to lend you. They'll lend you 3.5 versus 3.75. You obviously want the 3.75, but the bank always takes the lower option. So now that's how they do it, and that'll be ex GST as well. So it doesn't include the GST on the construction costs. So just be careful with that side of it as well. GST is a big issue that you need to just take into account when you're doing all of your feasibilities. So exclude the feasibility or exclude the GST on your construction costs, and also you're going to pay GST on the sales value as well. So you just need to watch that. Caution, high fees ahead. So another form of borrowing is private lenders. There's a difference between the private lenders and the major lenders, and basically the difference is the private lenders will give you easier access to money, so they're not as stringent with their requirements, so you can get a loan easier, low doc loans, whatever you want to call it. Obviously they're going to charge you higher interest rates. They typically charge 10 to 12% versus 5 or 6%, and they'll also have high establishment fees. So you'll be looking at probably 2.5% establishment fee. So again, if you're borrowing, say, $3 million from them, $3 million, quick calculation, 2.5%, that's 75 grand in an establishment fee, plus 10 to 12%. So if you're $3 million, another 300 grand in interest. So it's 375,000 it's going to cost you for 1 year's money. Now, you might think it's if it gets you out of a hole, and you think, well, the only way I can do it is this way, and you use them as a lever to get from A to B. I see nothing wrong with that once you have really got B locked in. It's one thing to get the money at A, stage A, but make sure make absolutely sure they've got B locked in, because what's going to happen is if you can't pay them back on time, they've got every right to walk in and basically take that development from you, and they've got themselves a development at maybe 70-80% of value. So you need to really make sure, if you're going to use these guys, just they do serve a purpose, and they can really get you out of a hole if you need it. Just be, again, assess the risks. Just be very, very, very aware of how the game is played. Another point as well is when you're, for example, with ourselves, we're using Westpac on our current development, and we use equity investors in our developments, which I'll show you in a second. But when you're using one of the major banks, it gives a bit more confidence, because to the investors and also to yourself, because when you're doing the development, the banks do all of their due diligence on it, and if they come back and say, yeah, John, we like this development, we think it's good, we're happy to lend you the money, well, then that proves your feasibility. It proves that your risk analysis is good. It proves that the development is sound. If the bank is coming back to you and saying, no, we're not going to lend on that, or we're only going to lend X amount on it, well, I think you really need to look at your development at that stage and go, okay, these guys are good at doing due diligence, and you need to, I think, heed their advice sometimes, and see what it is you need to change. That's not always the case, but it's certainly a good barometer. Sometimes banks can get too cautious, and that can be down to their funding models and their lending criteria and bank regulations, etc., etc. So it's not always the case, but just again a word of caution. Another form of funding is equity investing. Now, this is our business model. This is what we use. So we will bring in investors into our developments, and they share in the profits. So this is how I started in property development. I started in property development because it's obviously something I wanted to do. And I went to a Tony Robbins course, and one of the questions he was sort of asking was, if you can't do it and you want to do it, and what's stopping you? Lack of money was stopping me at the time. Okay, well, how can you get around that? And I sort of asked myself the question, well, if I use other people's money, I can get around it. And that's what I did. I went back to my friends and I said, guys, there's a block of land over here. I think we can all invest in it and make some money. I'm going to project manage it. I'm going to look after the whole thing. I've done the feasibility. I'm going to look after the sales. All you guys do is put in the money, and I'll get you back your return. And I did that, and it works, and it worked, and it continues to work for us. So that's a business model that we use. So again, and that helps you get to the next level. So again, I would say to you, it's think about that in terms of maybe getting some friends involved, or even family members, and clubbing together. And everybody, once somebody knows somebody takes charge, then they understand, I say, all of those risks and understands what they're doing. You don't want to lose. It's bad enough if you lose your own money. You don't want to lose other people's money. So just make sure you know what you're doing. This is the model that we use. We bring 35% equity into a project, 65% debt, which we bring in, and we become personal guarantors on that debt, and that 65% comes from that bank funding model I showed you a few minutes ago. But then what we do is we just split the profits 50-50. So 50% to the investors, 50% comes back to ourselves, which typically means that the investors, even though they're only putting in 35% of the equity, they're getting a 50% return. So they do very well on their returns, actually. But so do we. So it's a win-win situation, and that's what works. That's why we like it. One thing to be aware of with bringing in equity investors is there are AFSL license requirements, ASIC issues, and you need to get advice on that. I know we've had to go and get our own advice on that, and basically there's you can only have a certain amount of investors in a project, and then they have to be sophisticated wholesale investors. If not, then you've got to get AFSL license, and if you do it as a one-off, it's sort of okay. But if you're seen to be doing this as a business model and as a business and it's continuing, then you do need AFSL license license representation and a fund manager to actually run that fund. And it's quite onerous of a task, and it costs quite a bit of money to run one of these funds. But that's just the way it is, and that's we've had to go down that path with our business just because of the level that we're working at and the requirements of doing this on an ongoing basis. Valuations. So again, this comes down to your funding, and it's very important in terms of from a few different viewpoints, and I'll show you now. So this is to do with your pre-sales, okay, and it's to do with you understanding the value of the properties that you're selling, and understanding that you want to be selling them at a market value that obviously sells them. You don't want to be underselling them, but you also want to be selling them, giving people good value so that they do buy them. And the point I'm trying to make is that, for example, in valuation A here, you've got a house valued at 500,000. So, for example, at the beginning of the development, you might decide, well, listen, I'll just give the first few away for 500 instead of 550 because I want to get them away, and like I want to get my pre-sales in. So I'll give people a bit of a discount. I get my pre-sales, and everybody's happy. The problem is that the pre-sales are based upon the valuation of the actual completed product. So in this model, valuation A, I've got $500,000 valuation. You've got 65% bank lending, 325. You've got your site and your construction's costs of 420. Therefore, you've got a bank debt at 75% would be 315. You're borrowing 6.3 million. Therefore, you're doing 20 houses, you're borrowing 6.3 million. Therefore, you're going to need 13 pre-sales. So, and that's how you work it out. So you work out your 6.3 million is your costs, your borrowings, and the 6.3 million divided by your value of 500,000 gives you 13 pre-sales. That means I've got to go and work hard and get 13 pre-sales before I even start. Whereas in this situation over here, same costs, etc. My value is slightly higher, and it means I need 12 pre-sales. So it's a case of working out how many pre-sales the bank are going to require from you, and understanding that as well, because it's obviously very much fundamental to the funding of the construction of the site. I hope that's understandable. If not, give me send me an email or give me a shout, and I'll try and explain it a bit better. Again, any questions at this point? I'll give you a second to type some in, and I will answer them at the end with a bit of luck. And again, if not, I'll email them back to you. So I'm not going to keep you much longer. We're running close to the time at this stage. And I hope it's useful information. So again, next you've got the team. So these are the guys you're going to ask questions for. These are the guys who are going to charge you a fortune, and these are the guys that need to know the right answers. And if they don't know the right answers, then at least these are the guys that you can go back and sue afterwards, because they should have known the answers. I'm joking when I say sue them, but they are responsible, so they have to take responsibility. And it is complicated. It's I think you first need to look at yourself, and again, you don't know what you don't know. So have a good hard look at yourself before you get into this to understand exactly what your limitations are. And I think fair play to any of you that have signed up for this or are watching, because this is a good step to learn. You've obviously decided, well, I want to move from A to B. I need to learn more about it, and that's the goal. Your goal from this is to learn what you don't know. My goal is to show it to you. I really feel very passionate about that. I don't want people losing money. I don't want people buying sites that are just bad. And I'm looking at one at the moment actually for a client who's bought it, and it's not good. And then trying to get him out of it is really the issue rather than develop it. So look at your own skills, and if you don't have the skills, I suppose, then you need to go and learn, or you need to go and hire them. Simple as that. So your negotiation skills, your management skills, budgeting, forecasting, what you actually know about the development process, the construction process, and the skill of being diligent and tenacious of looking into that detail. If you're like a salesperson type and you just want big picture stuff, then I wouldn't necessarily go into this. And then understanding sales and marketing itself as well. So just understanding the skills that you need and what you've got and what you're going to need. Relationships are very important on your team, and they really come into play when things are going wrong. So I would say to you, look at your relationships with your team as long term. The same with, like, we do that. We look at our relationships with our equity investors as a long term project. We don't just want to. We're not interested in making money per se. I'm more interested in my main value is that people don't lose money and we maintain the relationship, and over time that becomes a very good solid relationship, and people continue to invest and reinvest in projects. So obviously making money is important, but it's not the be all and end all. Having a win-win attitude will help you when things are tough. People will listen to you. You don't want to be, I don't want to teach you how to, suck eggs. It's when you're over budget, for example, and you need somebody to help you out. You go back to your trades guy and you say, listen, we're blowing the budget on this. I really need to pull it back down. Can you help me? If you've had a good relationship with you, they will. And how you repay them is then in the next job. Number one, you've given them the next job. Number two, if there's a little bit of profit over and above that is left in that job, then give them a little bit extra. Don't be greedy and hold on to it all. Share a little bit. Have a little bit of a contingency in your budget that you say, right, when this comes through, I'm going to pay a little bit to everybody. And if it doesn't come through, then that's okay. But maybe they'll shave a bit to so your loss is less. So it's a win-win. And the same with them. I'd say the same thing to you about choosing your team or choosing your equity investors, is that it doesn't suit everyone, and you don't want you're not all things to all people either. You can't be. So make sure that you can build a relationship with those people. Make sure that because especially with equity investors, it's somebody's putting a lot of faith in you by investing money in your project, and obviously you want to reciprocate that, but you also want it to be a two-way street. So they also need to trust you with that, and that trust needs to be balanced with when things are going well. Obviously everybody's happy, but when things are suddenly you get hit with a 100 grand variation, you don't want somebody coming at you or hammering on you going you're failing at this when you're not, so by having those good relationships with those people, and that comes down to as well, keep people informed, let them know what's going on. Nobody likes surprises. We don't want to come into a development and think, I'm going to make $1 million and reach the other end 2 years later, and how much do we make? I made 50 grand. That's not fair. So keep people in touch. Communication, win-win. Your consultants are many. And with the bigger developments, you've got more and more and more consultants, and they are very professional people. They are very experienced people. They are the difference between make or break. And the earlier you get them in, and the earlier you consult them on a block of land, the better it is. So get everybody, run it as a project. Get everybody around the table. Run it as a project. Get everybody's input. And everybody's input is valid, and you don't want to be running to your stormwater engineer and he says, well, yeah, that's the lay of the land, it runs that way. Then you go around to the traffic engineer and he says, well, yeah, we need to put a road across there. Well, it doesn't work, and it costs time, money, effort. So get your team together, have a good team, and understand exactly what they're going to charge you. So again, there's no surprises. And all of these are literally in your feasibility then as well. I need to keep going because I think we're running out of time. Again, any questions, let me know. You'll have your cup of coffee very soon. I'm not going to keep you much longer, I promise. But I wanted to show you an in-depth of a project that we're doing at the moment, so you can really get into the nuts and bolts of things as well. So I'm going to run through that now. This is the one we're doing at Torrens Road in Kilkenny here in Adelaide, and we're building 22 townhouses, and we are building a commercial building at the front with a couple of apartments on the top. Just so you can see what else we've done in the past as well. There's one we've done in Kilkenny on David Terrace, where there was a couple of houses joined together. We knocked them down, put in 8 townhouses and a driveway, and that was the look of them, the design, the render of them, and they are just finished. These are a couple of months old now, these photographs, but yeah, they're more or less done at this stage. Just to give you a quick idea, we had a projected return on those of 437 grand. Projected time 14 to 18 months. Turned out to be 14 months and 429. So we did very well on that in the end. This is another block of land that we bought and developed. That was one I showed you at the beginning, I think it was, and we subdivided that into 14 blocks and just sold the blocks. Didn't do any construction, just put in all the services and sold it off, and with the help of some builders and house and land packages. Again, that was 735 grand projected return in 12 to 18 months. We actually got 555 grand, and it took us 22 months. So we went over budget. No, we went over budget, yeah, and over time on that, and various different reasons. That was the main one. Those were extremely expensive excavation and installation. So on to the next one, bigger and better, and this is the one we're doing. It's in Torrens Road. So I just want to give you a quick look at the location. It's hard to see on this slide, I'm aware, but here we've got cinemas, shopping centres, McDonald's, you name it, it's all in there. Coles, Woolworths, Harris Scarfs, EB Games, etc. There's a lot of this street here is a pretty main thoroughfare. There's a lot of traffic along there. There's a lot of shops and businesses along there. We've got a TAFE over this side. We've got the hospital down at the end. It's very close to the CBD. It's very close. There's public transport running along that area, and there's they've upgraded the at the end of this Torrens Road. They've upgraded the main road, which is a main northern expressway, so it's easy access onto that as well. So all those reasons, the area is becoming gentrified. There's a lot of infill development starting to happen, so it's pretty good. This is the block. It's a 3,500 square meter block, as you can see. Now, see those trees? They're not on our land, but we have to be very aware of them because they're within the tree protection zone, even though they're not on our land. So I just want to make aware of that. Look at trees and neighbouring properties. We've been able to get around it, but again, you have to be aware of it. There's the block again. That's the front. So all this will be obviously removed and knocked and etc. And that's what we're going to build. So 22 townhouses and a 3-story building. Some rendering shots of the front. We spent a bit of money on the design of these, and we wanted because we want a capital value product. So we want the people that buy into this to that the capital value is maintained and it grows strongly compared to other typical townhouses in the area. There's the floor plan. So 3 bedrooms. 1.5 bathrooms, garage, single garage, veranda, entertainment area, and then a balcony upstairs as well. So we designed it in a way that we could get, you see from the garage, running from the garage through to the backyard, so they're actually detached along that side. which allows light into the properties. And noise reduction and access for bikes and bins, etc. So they're only joined at the garage on that one side. All decent sized bedrooms and bathrooms and etc. So looking at the feasibility on this, in a nutshell, I'm not going to go through it right now, but we do a high level initially. I say get all your quotes in. And this document is a living object. It's constantly changing, but it's important to have your original and to look at your original budget and move from that budget. So you don't change the original budget; it's always varying, and you're through additions to it. So that shows you how to manage your budget. We go through everything. So your costs, your site purchase, and the return on investment. So return on investment is very important. It's 25% in this case. We won't touch it if it comes in at 20% or less. Well, 20% is okay. If it's less than 20%, we don't touch it. And return on equity is basically the power of leverage. Means that the actual equity that we're putting into this is 222% return. And that gives us a profit on this particular development of 2.1 million. So again, those 50 to 100 grand doesn't really bother us in terms of extra costs. We've also got a $210,288 contingency in there. And at this stage, we've got that down to 5% because of our costs are fixed. There's all our subdivision costs. We go through every single item. 1.2 million in subdivision costs. Our construction costs for it all, so a total of 4.2 million. Our sales values, we're going to bring in $11 million in sales. Got our marketing fees, project management fees, etc. is all in there. We're purchasing the block of land for 2.2 million, putting in 1.1 initially. So we need, with closing costs, acquisition costs, we need 1.2 million, and that's typically what we use then for our equity investment. So we'll bring in 1.2 million initially, that allows us to purchase the site. It gets our development approval through. So we'll also look at the subdivision costs and getting DA. So whoever got that development application is $5 grand, but we've got design, surveys, engineering for 31,000, demolition, etc. So site history reports, all that kind of stuff goes in there. And at the end of the day, we are making, what are we making on this one? Yeah, 2.2 million. So that's typically what we do. If you've got any interest in getting involved in that, obviously feel free to send me an email and let me know. I'm happy to send you out. I'll send you the feasibility on this anyway. I'm happy to send you the information memorandum that we've done up on that project. And as I say, it's something that's worth looking at potentially for yourselves as well. If not, it's good to learn about how it's done regardless, So that's hopefully what we're all going to do at the end of the day is we're all in this to make some money. So and enjoy ourselves and build the relationships and look after ourselves at the end of the day. I say any questions, please feel free to send me an email, jump on our website, like us on Facebook, get in contact, say hello, john@kingscoin.com.au. And I'd just like to say a big thank you. Thanks for sitting through this. It's late of an evening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've got some value out of it, I will answer all of your questions afterwards, and appreciate any feedback that you can give me as well. So thanks very much. Stay in touch and talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.